And we are live. That's right. It's the home edition, Smarter San Diego. Derek Evans here. I've got a very special guest today that a lot of you have chimed in on. You said, "Hey, I want you to ask Joe this. I want you to ask Joe that." So without further ado, let's bring in Joe Collins, Navy veteran. He's the guy who was taking on Maxine Waters. Dude, I got so many questions for you, Joe. But let's just start right with the race that you just got done running.
Okay.
And when you look at that, when you're doing something like that, when you're taking on someone who's been in office for decades, like, was there any point where you were like, we have a chance to win this? Or was that just something where it's like, we've got to at least go put up a fight so we can have something to build off of?
We really thought that we had a really good chance of winning, and we ran a really good race. We actually got Maxine to come out and campaign against us, which is something that has never happened before. Even after the election, as we're waiting to certify the election results and challenge results, a lot of people were still excited that we ran. I think one of the biggest things was I had just moved back to California after serving 13 and a half years in the military in 2017. And then we, launched our race back in 2019, July. So it's a lot of excitement there.
So sorry, here, let me add myself in. I updated the software here. It's a little bit different. So I'm trying to figure it out on the fly, Joe. So you did think you had a chance to win. Do you feel like there's been a lot of questions about, and we're going to get to the lockdowns. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today with Joe. But I just want to talk about this race because it was so recent. And I felt like from what I saw, I mean, Maxine doesn't even live in the district that she represents, which is crazy. That makes no sense. It seemed like from a ground game perspective, you had all the momentum. The results had it very lopsided in her direction. There's been a lot of questions about election irregularities and voting irregularities and things like that. Do you feel like that impacted the race that you were in, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of things that impacted the race that we were in. The injunction was put on Gavin Newsom to not send mail-in ballots to everybody unless they requested it, and he did it anyway. And so there you have the ability for illegal immigrants to vote, people who are not registered to vote, dead people, people who don't even live in California or in the respective district anymore to be able to vote. And so that's why, we're about to file a lawsuit so we can challenge the election results. Even on the night when they were supposed to be counting votes, as soon as the vote count opened, she had 115,000 votes. And everybody was like, well, how did she get votes? And they allegedly had just supposed to start counting votes. And then when you look at the history, it's always 72 to 28 or, some ridiculous number of votes that she got, and it has never changed. And those are also cause for concerns too. So we're definitely going to challenge the election results, and we're file our lawsuit and see what happens. I don't mind losing, but I do mind being cheated, and so we got to make sure that I wasn't cheated. The people of the 43rd district weren't cheated, also.
Yeah, yeah, very, very important to make sure that it was legitimate. I thought that was pretty interesting too. That it was such a big difference. It didn't seem to make sense for what we saw. Now you're saying, I don't know if we're breaking this or not, but you said that you're filing a lawsuit to challenge the election results in the race that you were in California.
Yes, absolutely. We can do it for our district. I think one of the biggest concerns that I have right now is that when it comes to challenging election results in California, it's like $1 million to challenge election results. And it's just way too much. They make it too hard. They make the cost too high for people to challenge the election results through the county. And so we're going to go through the courts and have the courts, challenge the election results. We're going to verify the signatures. We want to verify the citizenship status. We want to make sure that the people who are voting in the 43rd district actually live there and is registered to vote there. And so these are things that we actually have to look at. We also have to do a forensic audit of the machines and ensure that the machines aren't flipping votes for Maxine as well. And these are all things that we can do by going through the courts.
Okay. Was there anything, and by the way, we're live right now on Facebook. So if you want to drop a comment, if you have a question for Joe, drop it. We'll bring it up. We'll let you ask your questions. Was there anything that your constituents saw or that you saw or that was reported to you where you're like, hey, that isn't right? Or people saying that they showed up to vote and they were already voted or anything like that?
Yeah, we had someone tell us that the machines actually shut down in the Lawndale voting system station, and so we have to check that out. We also have people tell us they got 4 or 5 ballots. They also got ballots for people who didn't even live in the house or apartment that they were in. We did have one instance where somebody was told that they had already voted, and so they had to get that person a provisional ballot.
Hmm.
It was just a lot of things.
Wow, that's crazy. That's just it's such a crazy time right now. You said you just got back from Washington D.C. What were you
Yes.
doing there in D.C.?
We went to Washington D.C. to support the president at a few of the rallies that were out there. There was a lot of patriots out there, and they had like 6, 7 rallies going on at the same time. And so, since the president came out and supported our campaign, then we felt like we had to go back and go support our president.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. A lot of very interesting things going on. If you're into the Constitution or into law, this is a very interesting time to be paying attention to what's going on and seeing what's happening versus what's being reported in the media. Obviously, Maxine had probably a bigger budget than you did, I'm sure, right?
No,
But
we out fundraising Maxine Waters like 9-1. We raised $10.4 million. She only raised 1.6, and
really
we actually made her drain her budget. She had to spend money on actual campaign, and she spent money on radio advertising, TV advertising, mailers, newspapers, all of that stuff. So we made her get out there.
nice. So is that what you're trying to build off of that momentum? Like what's next for you right now? As far as you're going to file this lawsuit, you're going to contest this election, you're going to do what you can right there.
Mm.
But if that doesn't work out somehow, what's next for Joe? Are you going to come back at her again in a couple of years?
Yeah, we're actually already set up to run again. We just started back fundraising so we can run again. And like I said, there's a lot of excitement in the district for me running. I think one of the biggest things was I was new, so a lot of people in the district, they've been hurt by politicians so much, they've been lied to by politicians so much, they were very hesitant. But they really like me, Democrat, Republican. We were able to flip over 50,000 Democrats to vote Republican and in the 43rd district from the election results that we've gotten, and that's a great sign. And so we want to build off the momentum, build off the excitement. And I got a lot of letters. I read them. And one of the biggest concerns that people said was, we pointed out a lot of issues. Now, when we run again, we have to point out the solutions. How are we going to fix our district? What is my plan to rebuild my district? And so next time we'll run strictly on my plans to rebuild the 43rd district and how we can continue to progress America in a manner that's effective for the government and the people, and also our business owners.
Gotcha. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's obviously a lot of problems here in California from a governmental standpoint. Let's go ahead and just attack the elephant in the room. These lockdowns, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, right now, it's a business crusher. It's a dream crusher for so many people. And we know the people who start these restaurants and these retail businesses usually have their entire life savings into it. I mean, there's very few people who are just playing with house money when they start these kinds of businesses. They're being told right now you can't be open for business. It seems extremely un-American, but there's a seemingly good excuse that it's for safety reasons. I would love to get your thoughts on this if you have any insight for us.
Well, I'll tell you this, just based on pure common sense, they're not shutting down businesses for safety reasons. They're shutting down businesses for money reasons. And the reason why I say that is I actually just flew back in from Atlanta, and we had the frontline doctors of America in Atlanta doing a seminar talking about the effects of COVID-19 and the vaccine on Black and Brown communities. And one thing that they highlighted was that one, the masks don't work at all, and the shutdowns don't work. The social distance isn't going to work either. They tried it in the beginning of the year whenever COVID-19 first came around, and it didn't work then. So it's not going to work this time, especially when you talk about slowing the quote unquote spread. Um, so it's just destroying our businesses. Another thing is uh, hydroxychloroquine and zinc actually works to cure coronaviruses, but they were telling the doctors not to give it to anyone. This vaccine that's coming out, it has been tested on animals. I think the people who are taking the vaccine right now are the test dummies for this drug, so they don't even really know the dangers that come with this new vaccine that they're pushing out from Pfizer. And in my opinion, I think that's a problem. It's a huge problem. I don't want to be a test dummy for anybody's drugs. I don't want my children to be a test dummy either. And when you actually read what the drug does, it doesn't stop the spread or slow the spread of COVID-19. It only minimizes the symptoms. So it'll make you asymptomatic. You can still have COVID-19, but you just don't express the signs of COVID-19, and so those are cause for concerns as well. And it's just a lot. I think that the herd mentality will do best when it comes to COVID-19 because the transmission rates is going to be high. It's just like a hyped up flu. And but the more it's transmitted, the less and less deadly the virus gets. And we cannot take away from the fact that it has a 99.9% recovery rate for people 0 to 17, 17 to 30. It has a 99.95% recovery rate from 17 to 30, and 35 to 55. It has a 98% recovery rate. Everybody over 70 recovery rate is 94%. So I don't think a vaccine for a virus that has a high recovery rate is absolutely necessary, unless you're a senior citizen or you have pre-existing conditions that will speed up the way the virus affects your body.
You said something there. You said that the lockdown is not for safety reasons, it's for money reasons. What are those
Mhm.
money reasons for those of us who don't understand how there could possibly be money in shutting down businesses? What is really going on there, Joe?
Well, the reason why I say it's for money reasons is because we all know that a majority Democratic ran states where you had Democrat governors, Democrat congressmen, assemblymen, like a conglomerate of Democrats, those states has a huge deficit. They're in the negatives when it comes to their state budget, and so the more they shut down businesses, the more they say you can't do this, you can't do that, and shut down the economy for each individual states. They could petition the federal government for more money to make up for their lack of ability to manage a budget for their state.
Ah, so essentially, it's the bad is good situation. Like this happens sometimes in the stock market where it's like bad news is good news because bad news means more government stimulus is coming in. So like you get a terrible report from a big company and all of a sudden it's like, oh well, the Fed might lower rates or might inject cash or might do something so the stock market goes higher. So this is sort of that false front kind of scenario is what you're saying. If they make it bad enough, then they'll get more help for their mismanagement of prior resources.
Well, not with President Trump in office. President Trump isn't going to give any failing states any money. I think that he's already made that apparent that it's not going to happen. But I mean, the idea sounds good for someone who can't manage a budget for their state. Let's, kill the economy for our entire state and then hope the federal government is going to help us out.
Yeah, that just seems like such a bad long term strategy to have here. So you've spent some time in Washington supporting the president's scenario that he's in right now, which is one of the craziest ones we've ever seen with, you know, dueling electors in 7 different states. And January 6th is going to be an interesting day, my friend. Mark your calendars for that, people. Who
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen there? What are your thoughts on what happened in the presidential election? Do you have any insight? Have you talked to anybody? Do you know what people in politics are saying about this, or tell us what's going on behind the scenes with this election?
I don't have much insight, but from what I'm seeing, everybody's a little hesitant about calling the election. Even when you look at the battleground states where you had more people vote than people who actually lived in the states, those are causes for concerns. Even when the Supreme Court shot down Texas's and the rest of those states' ability to try and sway the election results for states where they saw a lot of irregularities, the Supreme Court shot it down. I'm pretty sure they had the reason. My thoughts on that is because every state has their own individual constitution outside of the federal constitution, and that mandates how that state is to do business when it comes to things like this. And so, you can't have one state trying to govern another state is actually repugnant to the Constitution, because the Constitution states that every state is its own sovereign entity. And when it comes to President Trump, I can understand his concern. I want the best for him. I want the best outcome, and just like him, um, he doesn't mind losing, but he does mind being cheated. So I think that his wanting to ensure that he had a fair election is warranted. I'm not mad at him. And I don't think that Joe Biden is more popular than Barack Obama or President Trump, not in a black community, not in anybody's community. And he didn't come out and campaign as much as he should have. And even when he did, a lot of people never showed up to his rally. So it's kind of crazy that he's a more popular president, got more votes than Barack Obama and President Trump. Um, but crazier things has happened. So we'll see. January 6th is going to be an interesting day, especially with Executive Order 51. And we'll see how that comes into play when we have this foreign interference in our elections. through the voting machines. And so that is, like you said, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that executive order you're referencing from, I believe, it's September of 2018,
Hmm.
which essentially was President Trump saying, "Hey, we haven't seen any interference as of now, but in the case that there is election interference by a foreign entity, it pretty much gives him a tremendous amount of power to seize assets and do all kinds of things from a law perspective that just gives him a tremendous amount of power. He hasn't exercised any of that yet, and a lot of people are telling him that he should be. Do you feel like he should be executing on that right now?
No, he can't do it until the election results are certified because that solidifies the fraud from each individual state who certified elections where they had irregularities. So he has to wait until January 6th when the electors get together and actually vote for who the president of the United States is based on whatever results or indications that they have.
Interesting. Yeah, I know there's definitely a lot of interesting things going on with regard to this, and I think we've got an interesting time in our because there's so many conspiracy theories right now. It's like you can't really entertain too much of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much, but crazy things always start as a conspiracy, and so you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. Certainly, I agree with the free Lady Gaga concert that like 400 people or 300 people showed up to. That to me was like, okay, Trump's going to win. As soon as I saw that, it's like, this is a performer who packs stadiums.
Mhm.
If they can't get more than a few hundred people to a free Lady Gaga concert, that to me is just showing you like there isn't much steam here. This seems to be a lot of sizzle, not a lot of steak.
Mhm.
So that was
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
made me predict that Trump was going to win. And now, when it comes to there's sort of a divide between I call it like Kennedy Democrats or like people who like a traditional Democrat versus sort of what we see now. The Democrat Party has sort of a different face to it than it did back in the day, where it seems to be so far left that people who were more in the middle, more moderate, now are Republicans, they're on the right because this pendulum has swung so far in this direction. In your district and in what you've seen on the ground, because you put in a lot of ground game in your campaign, do
Mhm.
you agree with that, or how would you place yourself on that spectrum?
Uh, one thing that I've started to learn was when you are in politics and you want to be an effective leader, you have to have a balanced perspective and understand both sides. And so I think that's what we started to do towards the end of the election as I learned more about politics. When it comes to people being Democrats and being far left or Republicans, moderates or independents. The younger people who identify themselves as Democrats are totally off the rockers. They want everything for free and they don't understand that. One, that's been tried already and it didn't work. It didn't work in the past. It's not going to work in the future, no matter how you wrap it up and put anything on it. The fact of the matter is, it's socialism and nobody wants to pay for somebody else's stuff. Um, Number two, you have Republicans. There's a lot of far right Republicans, and the far right Republicans act just like liberals, except they're Republicans, and their ideas are just as radical as liberals, except one is way over here and the other one is way over there. One thing that I don't like about it is if you don't fully agree with people all the way on the right, then they have a name for you. If you don't fully agree with everybody on the left, then they have a name for you. And one side refuses to speak to the other side, so we can never come to the table to create some type of resolutions for the issues that people have going on. And that was one of the biggest problems that we had whenever we were campaigning. I'm a Republican. I love being a Republican, but I don't agree with everything that everybody says or does. And it's America. I don't feel like I have to. And I served in the military, so I fought for people to have the right to be free to think whatever you want to and not be persecuted by somebody else or dismissed by somebody else because of what you believe. And that's a paradigm of what we're seeing throughout the entire country right now. But somebody has to be a leader and address it. It would have been great if President Trump could have addressed it, but he's very busy, and it also is upon the people who handles his campaigns or his advisors to tell him, you know what, you might want to address these things in a certain manner so people can know that you do understand what's going on in our country right now.
Yeah, maybe there's a seat for you at the table, my friend, or a second Trump administration. Maybe that could make sense. Give him a call. He's an open-minded guy, and what's interesting to me about the Trump phenomenon is sort of a shift from well, I'd say Barack Obama, who, by the way, I openly admit this, I voted for Obama in 2008. I really did think he was a not politician. I said, well, he's only been in politics for 2 years. I just don't want a politician. I just want a person
Hmm.
to serve, somebody who's going to serve the community, serve the country. So, I voted for him in 2008, realized I was wrong, pretty quick. And, but he was a great, spokesman for America, right? He was very well put together. He spoke extremely well, very charismatic, handsome guy. He kind of had it all. He was very presidential, as they say. And I think we've kind
Hmm.
of gone from a shift from wanting that cookie cutter, perfect, Ken doll type scenario to wanting the more raw stuff. And you see that with the growth of like the Joe Rogan podcast. The number one show in the world is in a guy's basement,
Hmm.
but it's
Yeah.
super raw. And Trump's kind of like that. He's very just raw. Like he'll just tell you what's on his mind. I love the transparency. I think there's a shift to that. But what do you think people really want? Like, let's start with your district. Do you think is the number one issue that you would tackle in your district if you're able to get these election results, overturned, or if you're able to beat Maxine next time around?
That's a really good question. One thing that I would tackle, well, the first thing that I would tackle, it would have to be this homeless crisis is really getting out of hand. I mean, on any given night in California, we have over 160, 170,000 people sleeping on the streets, and 60% of these are Black people, and then 40% are veterans. And so these are issues that, matter to me a lot. And I think that we have to start solving that. And the way you do it is by attacking the state to lower the taxes, get rid of restrictions on developments. We have to bring quality jobs back and improve our education system. All of these help bring down the cost of living in California so people can get those quality jobs and get back into houses and apartments and condos.
Yeah, I think it's tough to get some of those things done if you're sort of ruling from the ivory tower like Maxine is over there, and not even in the district. I mean, that's the thing that I think that's really missing, from a politics standpoint, which I think was tremendous about what Trump did as far as having these rallies and getting people out and involved and shaking hands and waving at people and getting eye to eye with people and belly to belly with people. I think that's the thing that's sort of missing. There's this humongous disconnect from a political standpoint. It's the reason I didn't want a politician. I mean, I was 12 years old running around campaigning for Ross Perot. That was my first like foray in
Wow.
politics.
Wow.
Because I'm like, hey, this guy, I watched his little infomercial. I'm like, this guy has a good plan. It's actually logical. It makes sense. He's not a politician. He just has ideas. They're very simple. So I don't think it's rocket science, but it gets difficult the more tainted things get from how where you get your money from. So one of the reasons I know the president hasn't taken money from Wall Street until he said I can make a phone call, I could get the money, but then I have issues with other things down the road I have to deal with. So I think what you're
Hmm.
saying there is huge. Homelessness is a humongous problem here in California in general. Here in San Diego, it's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as some of the other areas, closer to LA and even up into San Francisco as well.
It's
So that's
true.
definitely a big issue. What do you think is the biggest issue just nationally? Let's say you get a seat on that Trump administration. Let's say you're in the cabinet, man. Let's say you can really make a difference. What would you push for? What would be
Hmm.
your big push?
Um, nationally,
Yeah.
nationally, one of the biggest issues that we have, and this is just my opinion, is the division in the country. They have a social class division, and if that doesn't work, then they have a racial class division, and everybody, seems on edge. Nobody feels like they're involved on the level that they need to be when it comes to creating change or even feeling comfortable in America anymore. And so, I would definitely be that one on an administration to create a program or to be that person to help the president bring the country back together. I know that Joe Biden said that he was fighting for the soul of America, which it was kind of like a dumb tagline because especially for people who are Christians or they have their spiritual religious beliefs, it's like, well, my soul is supposed to belong to God or the Creator or higher power, not to the government, which is pretty off putting. But we definitely have to bring our country back together. We have to get everybody back on the same playing field, and I think that would be my position in the cabinet.
And how would we do that? What's the best way to approach something like that from your like this, what kind of changes? Because I feel like there has to be something sort of drastic done. And I don't know what it is, but I feel like these incremental things don't seem to work because the influence in the culture whether it's the news, the media, or whatever, is so powerful. It's like when you have kids, like you see, you have kids, they go to school. Well, school, as soon as they start going to school all day, school has more influence over them than you do. Unless you really put a lot of effort into it. And I feel like we're kind of in that sort of scenario. It's like what way can we tackle the divide that would make sense?
We got to talk about it. We have to talk about it. And in my opinion, something that has never happened before, America has to address the history of America. And you just got to put it on the table. Yes, we had slavery in America. Yes, people are affected by certain things that happened in the past. Yes, there is racial injustice when it comes to police brutality and Black and Latino communities. Yes, there are disparities when you talk about the wealth gap between the Blacks and whites and Latinos and Asians. Like, these issues actually exist, whether you want to acknowledge it or believe in it or not. And so everything has to get put on the table. History has to be told in conjunction with what they have written in the Library of Congress, and not the watered down, washed out history that makes people feel good about themselves because they don't actually experience the entire truth. And so truth has to get on the table. We have to change the paradigm. We have to change, how things are ran in America. And we absolutely have to talk about the history and learn how to move forward by using the history as a learning tool.
Yeah, I think that the historical elements are big. As I was just lucky enough, randomly, my first book report ever, I went to the library, grabbed the first book I saw. It was the autobiography of Martin Luther King Jr. So from that point, moving forward, anytime I had a book report, I got to choose the topic. I would always choose MLK, and so I got to learn a lot about and that was really his mission, right? Was to ultimately bring the truth up. And he was he had theological studies. I don't know if he was technically a pastor or not, or considered himself one, but he had a tremendous amount of schooling, academic work in theological studies. And so he would connect a lot of what he was doing, sort of connecting, God and religion to reality and trying to bring things forth that were righteous and true. I think the biggest thing that he would be upset about today is how much people lie. It was hard. It's funny because you would think it would be harder to lie today with all the cameras and all the media and all everyone trying to gotcha everybody else. But somehow people are actually able to just lie all the time and get away with it. I think that would be the thing that would be the most disappointing, to Dr. King today. And I have no reason to speak on his behalf, but just what I've read about him for all these years, I feel like truth is what we need to get closer to, is what we continue to keep getting further away from. And I don't know how we can change that. What are your thoughts on that?
I have to agree with you. The amount of misinformation that gets pushed out through media is just unbelievable, in my opinion. And getting back to truth is something that we have to do. But I think when you have money, influence, and politics and the media, you'll never get to where you want to be unless the government has the ability to control the output of this media organization. And a lot of times, they create laws that says, well, the media has, autonomy from being sued from false information because, they get to express their free speech. In my opinion, is companies and organizations shouldn't have free speech. They should be able to only talk about the truth. Free speech, the Constitution was written for people. They skewed the Constitution whenever the federal government allowed entities and businesses and corporations to be treated the same as people. And I don't think that's what our founding fathers had in mind whenever they created the Constitution, to protect our right to free speech, or protect our rights to live in a society where the information that is flowing is true and factual.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot that's coming out about that. The rules with, I think it's uh, Bill 230, Section 230, that is regarding social media. That's something that's big, that's on the table, that I think is a real problem. Let me see if I
Mhm.
can pull this up here. Add to broadcast. Let's see if this works. Sherry says, we got to get back to having morals and integrity. We can't have political components talking about destruction to create change. all that's done is creating more destruction. Sure seems to be right. And so the path to change, I think we both agree, is about truth and transparency. And that's the thing that I think is missing the most. I feel like what people can learn, and I think what you've done, what you've learned, and what you've seen in your campaign is that if you can bring that sort of transparency and truth to the table, you can get a nice grassroots movement going, which is a lot of what I think is why Trump has built such a big audience, because he's got that incredible ground game, that incredible, face to face event type situation going, where there's just a super transparent, conversation that he's having with people. Do you feel like that is something that was worked really well in your favor as well, or is that something that you're looking to the next campaign like I'm going to do more of that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because a lot of people don't like hearing the truth. A lot of people want to hear what makes them feel good. They want to hold on to the past, hold on to things that hasn't worked in a very long time. I think what we're gonna do in our next race is we're just gonna focus on what we're gonna do in order to rebuild our community and to rebuild the United States. How we're gonna work effectively with leaders of the opposing party effectively. So that's going to be our goals. I think that pointing out like issues all the time kind of gets people kind of get tired of it, and running an angry campaign, blaming somebody for this or blaming somebody for that on a regular basis, and have to defend negative positions becomes exhausting. And so we're gonna be able to focus on a more positive campaign where we're gonna highlight things that we're gonna do to improve our country, improve our communities.
Tremendous stuff, Joe. Thank you so much for your time, man. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on. Hey, good luck on your lawsuits, man. I hope the truth is revealed, whatever it is. I hope we get to the bottom of it. And if you have the new fundraising link available, make sure your people send it to us. We'll put it with all the videos that we're going to post regarding here. Really appreciate your time, brother. It's great to see you.
You as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. That's Joe Collins, ladies and gentlemen. He was running the race against Maxine Waters up in the 53rd District here in California. Republican, Navy veteran, someone who has great values and is trying to make real change in a community that desperately needs change. In case you didn't know, Maxine doesn't even live in that district, but she's been representing that district. We'll see what happens. Let's see what happens with Joe's lawsuit. Let's see if he can get to the bottom of those election irregularities and find out the truth. I think there's a whole lot of truth that's coming in the near future, and I think that truth is always good, even if we don't necessarily like it. The truth is always good. Please share this with your friends. Let's help make them smarter than everyone else. I'll see you guys soon.